freedom was never free. It was earned by those who dared to fight when hope seemed lost. This is the WWII Revelation channel. Subscribe and honor the stories of those who gave everything for the world we live in today.
May 1945, in a makeshift detention camp near the Austrian border, 23 German women sat in silence, their swollen bellies a stark reminder that war spared no one. Among them, 19-year-old Elsa Hoffmann pressed her hand against her abdomen, feeling her baby kick as American soldiers approached the barbed wire fence. "They're coming," whispered Margaret, the oldest woman in the group, her voice trembling. "God help us all." Elsa had heard the stories. Every German woman had. The whispered warnings about what happened when enemy soldiers found defenseless women. Her husband Klaus had made her promise to protect their child, no matter what, before he disappeared into the chaos of Berlin's fall. "Stay calm," Elsa said, though her own heart hammered against her ribs. "We have no choice." The gate creaked open. 3 American soldiers entered, their boots crunching on the gravel. The women instinctively moved closer together, forming a protective circle. Elsa noticed the youngest soldier couldn't have been more than 20, his face still soft with youth despite the uniform. "Ma'am," the lead soldier said, addressing Margaret. His German was broken but understandable. "We need to know. How many of you are expecting? When are the babies due?" Margaret's eyes widened. "Why do you ask this?" The soldier exchanged glances with his companions. "Just answer, please." 15 of us, Margaret finally said. "Some within weeks, some months away." The soldier nodded slowly, writing something in a small notebook. Elsa watched his face, searching for cruelty, for the violence she'd been warned about. Instead, she saw something that confused her more than anything: concern. "Any complications? Anyone sick?" "We're all hungry," Elsa heard herself say, her voice stronger than she felt. My baby moves less each day." The soldier's jaw tightened. He turned to his companions and spoke rapid English that Elsa couldn't follow. Then he looked back at her, and for a moment, their eyes met. "What's your name?" "Elsa. Elsa Hoffmann." "How old are you, Elsa?" 19. Something flickered across his face. He closed the notebook and straightened his shoulders. "We'll be back tomorrow morning, early." As the soldiers left, Margaret grabbed Elsa's arm. "Why did you speak to them? Why did you tell them about the baby?" "I don't know," Elsa whispered, watching the soldiers disappear beyond the fence. "But did you see his face when I told him?" "What about it?" "He looked angry, but not at us." That night, Elsa couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the soldier's expression, the way he'd written in that notebook. The tension in his voice when he promised they'd return. Her baby kicked weakly, and she sang the lullaby her mother had taught her, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The next morning arrived with unexpected sounds. Elsa woke to the rumble of trucks and urgent voices speaking English. She struggled to her feet, her back aching from sleeping on the thin mattress, and moved to the window of the converted barn where they were housed. "Mein Gott!" Margarete breathed beside her. "What is this?" 4 military trucks had parked outside the fence. Soldiers were unloading wooden crates, their movements quick and purposeful. The same young soldier from yesterday was directing the operation, pointing and gesturing as others carried the boxes toward the camp entrance. "Everyone back!" a guard shouted in German. "Away from the door!" The women retreated, clustering together as the door swung open. 6 soldiers entered, carrying the crates. The lead soldier from yesterday, Elsa had heard another call him Sergeant Morrison, stepped forward. "We brought supplies," he said in his halting German. "Medical supplies, food, milk." "Milk?" Elsa repeated, certain she'd misunderstood. "Powdered milk," Morrison confirmed. "For the mothers, for the babies when they come." He gestured to another soldier, who opened one of the crates. Inside were tins of milk powder, bottles, clean cloth for bandages, and small jars of what looked like vitamins. Margaret stepped forward cautiously. "Why are you doing this?" Morrison's expression hardened. "Because it's the right thing to do." He paused, seeming to struggle with the German words. You are prisoners, yes. But you are also mothers. The babies, they didn't start this war. Our commanders won't like this, one of the younger American soldiers muttered in English. Then they can take it up with me, Morrison replied sharply in English before switching back to German. We also brought a doctor. She will examine each of you. She, Elsa asked. A woman in an American uniform entered, her medical bag in hand. She was perhaps 30, with kind eyes and capable hands. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Chen, she said in perfect German. I'm a nurse. I'd like to check on you and your babies if you'll let me. The women looked at each other uncertain. This wasn't what they'd expected, not at all. I'll go first, Elsa said suddenly, stepping forward. Margaret tried to grab her arm, but Elsa pulled away. If they wanted to hurt us, they wouldn't bring a nurse. Lieutenant Chen smiled gently. Thank you. What's your name? Elsa Hoffman. How far along are you, Elsa? 7 months, I think, maybe 8. It's hard to know anymore. Chen nodded, opening her bag. Let's take a look. When did you last feel the baby move? This morning, but not much. Not like before. The nurse's expression grew serious as she examined Elsa, her hands gentle but thorough. Morrison watched from near the door, his arms crossed. Elsa noticed he seemed tense, as if waiting for something. You're malnourished, Chen said finally. The baby is small, too small. She turned to Morrison. She needs protein, real food, not just bread and water. Can you make a list? Morrison asked. Everything they need? It'll be a long list, Sergeant. I don't care. Make it. Elsa stared at him, confusion mixing with something she didn't dare name. Hope, perhaps. Why? She asked in halting English. Why you help? Morrison looked at her for a long moment. My sister, he said slowly in German. She died having a baby, back home in Ohio. The doctor came too late. His voice roughened. I couldn't help her, but maybe I can help you. 3 days passed, and the camp transformed in ways Elsa couldn't have imagined. The American soldiers brought food, real food, not the watery soup and stale bread they'd survived on. Eggs, cheese, fresh bread, vegetables, and milk, so much powdered milk that Lieutenant Chen joked they could open a dairy. Drink it slowly, Chen instructed Elsa, watching as she sipped the warm milk. Your stomach needs time to adjust. Elsa nodded, savoring every drop. Already she felt stronger. The baby had started moving more, responding to the nourishment, but with the physical relief came a deeper confusion that kept her awake at night. I don't understand them, she confessed to Margaret one evening. We're the enemy. Our husbands, our brothers, they fought against these men, maybe killed their friends. And yet they bring us milk, Margaret finished. She was knitting a small blanket from yarn Chen had provided, her fingers working automatically. My son is fighting somewhere, or was fighting. I don't know if he's alive. She paused. These American boys, they're someone's sons too. Does that make it right? What we did, what Germany did? Margaret's hands stilled. No, child. Nothing makes that right. But maybe, she looked at Elsa with tired eyes. Maybe this is what happens when the killing stops. We remember we're human. The barn door opened, and Morrison entered with another soldier. Elsa Hoffman? Elsa's heart jumped. Yes? We need to move you, you and 3 others, the ones closest to delivery. Fear spiked through her. Move us where? To a real hospital in town. The Austrian civilians, they're not happy about it, but Lieutenant Chen says you need better facilities. He saw her expression and added quickly, You're not in trouble. This is for the babies. The Austrian people hate us, Elsa said quietly. We occupied their country. Yeah, well, they'll have to deal with it. Morrison's tone was firm. Get your things. The truck leaves in 20 minutes. As Elsa gathered her few possessions, a photograph of Klaus, a letter from her mother, the small blanket Margaret had been making, her hands trembled. A hospital, real medical care, for her baby. Elsa, Margaret called softly, take this. She pressed the unfinished blanket into Elsa's hands. "For when the baby comes." "But it's not finished. You'll finish it. You'll have time and warm hands and a full belly." Margaret's eyes glistened. "You'll survive this. Your baby will survive this." The truck ride through the Austrian countryside was surreal. Elsa sat with 3 other pregnant women, all of them silent, watching the world pass by. Villages with damaged buildings. Fields beginning to green with spring. People stopping to stare at the American trucks. Morrison rode in the front. Occasionally he glanced back, checking on them. "Sergeant," Elsa called out in English, the words awkward on her tongue. "Your sister. What was her name?" He turned, surprised. "Mary. Her name was Mary." "I'm sorry. For Mary." Something in his expression softened. "Yeah, me too." The hospital was a converted monastery, its stone walls thick and cool. Austrian nuns moved through the halls, their faces carefully neutral as they watched German prisoners being brought in. Lieutenant Chen was already there, directing the setup of a maternity ward. "This way," she said, leading Elsa to a clean room with an actual bed. "You'll stay here until the baby comes. We'll monitor you daily." Elsa sat on the bed, feeling the soft mattress, and suddenly tears came. She couldn't stop them. All the fear, the hunger, the uncertainty, it poured out of her. Chen sat beside her, saying nothing, just placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I thought they would hurt us," Elsa finally whispered. "I thought everyone said—" "I know what everyone said," Chen replied quietly, "but not all soldiers are the same. Not all people are the same." She paused. "Sergeant Morrison, he's a good man. He sees you as people, not just enemies." "But we are enemies." "The war is over, Elsa. Now we're just people trying to survive." That night, lying in a real bed for the first time in months, Elsa felt her baby kick strongly. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "We're going to be okay. I don't know how, but we're going to be okay." 2 weeks later, Elsa woke to pain that stole her breath. The contractions came in waves, each one stronger than the last. A nun rushed to get Lieutenant Chen, who arrived within minutes, calm and efficient. "It's time," Chen said, checking Elsa quickly. "You're doing great. Just breathe." But as the hours passed, Chen's expression grew concerned. The baby wasn't descending properly. Elsa was exhausted, her strength fading despite the weeks of better food. "We might need to do a cesarean," Chen told Morrison, who had appeared at some point pacing outside the room. "But I'm a nurse, not a surgeon. I've assisted, but I've never—" "There's a German doctor," Morrison interrupted. "In the POW camp, 15 miles from here, Dr. Friedrich Weber. He was a surgeon in Berlin. A prisoner." "Yeah, but he's got the skills." Morrison's jaw set. "I'll get him here. The colonel will never approve bringing an enemy POW to treat another enemy. Then I won't ask permission." Morrison was already moving. "Keep her stable. I'll be back in 3 hours." Elsa heard all of this through a haze of pain. A German doctor, one of their own. The irony wasn't lost on her, an American soldier breaking rules to save a German baby. Chen stayed beside her, wiping her forehead, encouraging her. "Hold on, Elsa, just hold on." Time became meaningless. Pain and fear blurred together. Elsa thought of Klaus, wondered if he was alive, if he'd ever meet their child. She thought of her mother in Hamburg, probably dead in the bombing. She thought of Mary, Morrison's sister, dying in Ohio while giving birth. "I don't want to die," she whispered. "You won't," Chen said firmly. "I won't let you." The door burst open. Morrison entered with an older man in a worn German uniform, his medical bag clutched in his hand. Dr. Weber's eyes swept the room, taking in the situation instantly. "How long has she been in labor?" he asked in German. 14 hours, Chen replied in the same language. "The baby is in distress. Heartbeat is dropping." Weber moved to Elsa's side, his hands already examining her. "We need to operate. Now. Do you have surgical equipment?" "Yes, but—" "Then prepare it. We have maybe 30 minutes. He looked at Morrison. "You brought me here. Now I need you to trust me." Morrison nodded. "Save them both." The surgery was a blur of pain and voices. Elsa felt the pressure, the pulling, and then a cry. A baby's cry, her baby's cry. "A girl," Weber announced, his voice thick with emotion. "A healthy girl." Chen wrapped the baby and placed her in Elsa's arms. She was tiny, red-faced, perfect. Elsa looked down at her daughter and felt the world shift. "What will you name her?" Chen asked softly. Elsa looked up at Morrison, who stood in the doorway, his face showing relief and something else, maybe hope. Then she looked at Chen, who had stayed by her side through everything. Finally, she looked at Dr. Weber, who had risked everything to save a stranger's child. "Hope," Elsa whispered. "Her name is Hope, because that's what you all gave me." Morrison cleared his throat roughly. "That's a good name." Dr. Weber finished the surgery, his hands steady despite his own exhaustion. When he was done, Morrison approached him. "Thank you, Doctor." "I'm still your prisoner," Weber said quietly. "Yeah, but you're also a man who just saved 2 lives." Morrison paused. "That counts for something. That counts." "Breeze." As Weber was escorted back to the POW camp, Elsa held Hope close, feeling her daughter's tiny heartbeat against her chest. Outside, spring was turning to summer. The war was over. The world was broken. But in this moment, in this room, there was life. There was kindness. There was hope. And maybe Elsa thought that was enough to start rebuilding. Summer arrived with unexpected gentleness. The hospital ward that had been prepared for one birth now housed 7 German babies, their cries filling the stone corridors of the old monastery. Elsa watched Hope sleep in the makeshift crib beside her bed, marveling at how something so small could contain so much possibility. "You're healing well," Lieutenant Chen said during her morning examination. "Another week and you can return to the camp." The words hit Elsa like cold water. Return to the camp, back to the barn, the barbed wire, the uncertainty. She'd allowed herself to forget, in this quiet room with clean sheets and regular meals, that she was still a prisoner. "What will happen to us?" Elsa asked quietly. "To the babies?" Chen's expression clouded. "I don't know. The situation is complicated. Germany is being divided. Refugees everywhere. The camps are overflowing. And the Americans? Will they keep us here? That's not my decision to make." Chen packed her medical bag slowly. "But Sergeant Morrison is fighting for you. All of you. He's written letters to his commanding officers, to the Red Cross, even to some congressmen back in Ohio." Elsa's throat tightened. "Why does he care so much?" "Because he's seen too much death. I think saving you, saving Hope, it helps him remember why we fought in the first place." Chen paused at the door. "Not for revenge, for this, for life." That afternoon, Morrison appeared with news that made Elsa's heart race. "We found him," he said without preamble. "Your husband, Klaus Hoffmann. He's alive." Elsa's legs went weak. She sat down hard on the bed. "Where? How?" "British POW camp in northern Germany. He was wounded, but he's recovering. The Red Cross confirmed it." Morrison handed her a piece of paper. "He sent this." With shaking hands, Elsa unfolded the letter. Klaus's handwriting, familiar and beloved, swam before her eyes. "My dearest Elsa, if you receive this, know that I am alive and thinking of you every moment. I heard rumors that you were taken by the Americans. I pray you are safe. I pray our child is safe. I will find you, I promise. Wait for me. Your Klaus." Tears streamed down Elsa's face. "He doesn't know. He doesn't know about Hope." "Right back," Morrison said gently. "I'll make sure he gets it." Elsa looked up at him, this American soldier who had become something she never expected. A friend. "Thank you for everything. I don't know how to repay." "You don't need to repay anything." Morrison's voice was firm. "Just take care of that baby. Raise her to be better than we were. That's payment enough." Over the next days, Elsa wrote and rewrote her letter to Klaus, trying to capture everything that had happened. The fear, the unexpected kindness, the birth of their daughter. She told him about Morrison and Chen, about Dr. Weber, about the milk and medicine that had saved their lives. "I named her Hope," she wrote. Because in the darkest moment, that's what these strangers gave us. Hope that the world could be different. Hope that enemies could become human to each other again. But as she sealed the letter, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, angry and sharp. Morrison's voice, defensive. Another man's voice, cold with authority. Chen burst into the room, her face pale. "Get Hope, now. They're moving you." "Who? Where?" "Colonel's orders. All German prisoners are being transferred to a larger facility. Today. Immediately." Elsa's hands trembled as she gathered Hope into her arms. "But the other babies, they're too young to travel." "I know. Morrison is trying to delay it," but the door opened. A different American officer entered, his uniform crisp, his expression hard. Behind him, Morrison stood with clenched fists, his face flushed with anger. "Mrs. Hoffman," the colonel said in clipped German, "you and the other women will be ready to depart in 1 hour. Gather your belongings." "Sir, these women just gave birth," Morrison protested. "Some of them less than a week ago. They're not strong enough." "That's not our concern, Sergeant. We're not running a charity hospital. These are enemy nationals, and they need to be processed through proper channels." "Proper channels?" Morrison's voice rose. "These are mothers with newborn babies." "That's enough, Sergeant." The colonel's tone turned icy. "You've already overstepped your authority multiple times. Consider yourself fortunate. I'm not bringing you up on charges for unauthorized use of military resources." Morrison's jaw worked, but he said nothing. The colonel turned back to Elsa. 1 hour, Mrs. Hoffman." As the colonel left, Morrison slammed his fist against the wall. "Damn it, I'm sorry, Elsa. I tried—" "I know," Elsa said softly, holding Hope closer. "You did more than anyone could expect, more than we deserved." "Don't say that. You deserved basic human decency. That's not something you have to earn." Chen appeared with a bag. "I packed supplies. Formula, bottles, bandages, medicine. It's not much, but it's something." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry." The hour passed too quickly. Elsa found herself in a truck with the other mothers, their babies crying in the heat. Margaret was there too, having been brought from the main camp to help with the infants. "Where are they taking us?" one of the younger women asked, her voice panicked. "I don't know," Margaret said, "but we have each other, and we have our children. That's something." As the truck pulled away, Elsa looked back. Morrison stood watching, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders slumped. Chen stood beside him, wiping her eyes. They had tried. Against orders, against protocol, against the easy hatred that war bred, they had tried to help. Hope whimpered in Elsa's arms, and she began to sing softly, the same lullaby her mother had taught her. Around her, the other mothers joined in, their voices blending in the back of the military truck as it carried them toward an uncertain future. The new facility was exactly what Elsa had feared. A massive camp surrounded by high fences and guard towers, filled with thousands of German prisoners. Women, children, elderly men, all crammed together in long barracks that offered little privacy and less comfort. "At least we're together," Margaret said, trying to find something positive as they were assigned to a crowded barracks. "The babies, the mothers, they kept us together." It was true, but small comfort. The conditions were harsh. Food was scarce again. Medical care was minimal. The American soldiers here weren't cruel, but they weren't Morrison either. They were tired, overwhelmed, just trying to manage an impossible situation. Elsa rationed the formula Chen had given her, making each bottle last as long as possible. She watched Hope constantly, terrified that her daughter would sicken in this place. Around her, other babies cried from hunger, from heat, from the general misery of the camp. "My milk dried up," one young mother sobbed. "I can't feed my son. What do I do?" Elsa shared her formula, though she knew it wouldn't last. Other mothers did the same, pooling their meager resources. They took turns caring for the babies, singing to them, trying to create some sense of normalcy in the chaos. Weeks passed. Summer heat turned the barracks into ovens. Elsa's letter to Klaus had never been sent. Morrison wasn't here to ensure its delivery. She didn't even know if he'd gotten in trouble for helping them. The thought kept her awake at night. Then on a sweltering August morning, everything changed. "Elsa Hoffman," a guard called out. "Report to the administration building." Fear spiked through her. Margaret grabbed her arm. "Don't go, it could be—" "I have to." Elsa handed Hope to Margaret. "If I don't come back, you'll come back," Margaret said firmly. "You have to." The walk to the administration building felt endless. Elsa's mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. Had they discovered something about Klaus? Was she being separated from Hope? Deported? But when she entered the office, she stopped dead. Morrison stood there in a fresh uniform, his face breaking into a smile when he saw her. "Sergeant Morrison?" Elsa's voice came out as a whisper. "I got transferred," he explained quickly. "Requested it, actually. Pulled every string I had." He gestured to a woman beside him, middle-aged and kind-faced. "This is Mrs. Eleanor Patterson. She's with the Quaker Relief Organization." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, speaking in excellent German. "Mrs. Hoffman, we've been working to relocate nursing mothers and their infants to better facilities, places where you can receive proper care, where the babies can thrive." "I don't understand," Elsa said. Morrison's smile widened. "We're getting you out of here. You, Hope, and 15 other mothers with infants. There's a displaced persons camp in Bavaria. It's not perfect, but it's better than this. Real housing, medical care, enough food." "But how?" "Sergeant Morrison has been quite persistent," Mrs. Patterson said with a slight smile. "He's made your case, and the case of the other mothers, to several humanitarian organizations. We've secured approval to transfer you." Elsa felt tears streaming down her face. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll pack," Morrison said gently. "You leave tomorrow." That night, Elsa held Hope close, telling her about the man who wouldn't give up, who saw past uniforms and flags to the humanity underneath. Margaret listened, her own eyes wet. "Will I be going?" Margaret asked quietly. "I'll make sure of it," Elsa promised. "You've cared for all of us. You deserve this too." The next morning, as Elsa climbed into the truck that would take them to Bavaria, she saw Morrison one last time. She walked over to him, Hope in her arms. "I want you to know something," she said in careful English. "When Hope is older, I will tell her about you, about what you did. About the American soldier who showed us that kindness is stronger than hate." Morrison's eyes glistened. "Just raise her right, Elsa. Teach her that people matter more than politics. That's all I ask." "I will, I promise." As the truck pulled away, Elsa watched Morrison grow smaller in the distance. She thought about how war had brought them together, enemy, and how humanity had transformed them into something else entirely. Not friends, perhaps. The wounds were too fresh for that, but witnesses to each other's humanity, proof that even in the darkest times, light could break through. Hope stirred in her arms, her tiny hand grasping Elsa's finger. And Elsa smiled, because for the first time in years, the future didn't seem quite so dark. The displaced persons camp in Bavaria was a revelation. Real buildings, not barracks, gardens where vegetables grew, a school for the older children, a medical clinic staffed by volunteers from various relief organizations. It wasn't home. Elsa didn't know if she'd ever have a home again, but it was a place where hope could grow. Lieutenant Chen appeared 2 weeks after their arrival, now working with the Red Cross. She examined Hope with professional thoroughness, then smiled. "She's thriving. You've done well, Elsa." "Thanks to you. And Morrison, is he—" "He's fine. Back in the States, actually. Discharged last month." Chen pulled out an envelope. "He asked me to give you this." Elsa opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photograph. Morrison with his family in Ohio, his arm around a woman who must be his wife, 2 small children at their feet. On the back, he'd written in simple German, "This is what we were fighting for, not to destroy, but to protect. I hope you and Hope find your own version of this. Be well, James Morrison." "James," Elsa murmured. "I never knew his first name." He never knew yours was Elsa Marie, Chen replied. Funny how we can save each other's lives and still be strangers in some ways. But they weren't strangers, not really. They were connected by something deeper than names or nations, by the choice to see humanity in the face of the enemy, to offer help when hatred would have been easier. Months passed. Autumn turned to winter, then winter to spring. Hope learned to smile, then to laugh, then to roll over. Elsa found work in the camp, helping to organize the distribution of supplies. She made friends among the other displaced women, all of them trying to build new lives from the rubble of the old. And then, on a bright May morning exactly 1 year after Hope's birth, a man appeared at the camp gates. He was thin, limping slightly, his face weathered by hardship, but Elsa would have known him anywhere. Klaus, she breathed. He saw her and broke into a run, his limp forgotten. They collided in an embrace that felt like coming home after a long, dark journey. He was crying, she was crying, and between them, Hope began to cry too, startled by the commotion. "Is this—" Klaus pulled back, staring at the baby in Elsa's arms. "This is Hope, your daughter." Klaus took Hope gently, his hands shaking. He looked at her with wonder, with love, with the kind of awe that only a parent seeing their child for the first time can feel. "She's beautiful. She's perfect. She's alive because of an American soldier," Elsa said quietly, "because he chose kindness over hatred." That night, as they sat together in the small room Elsa had been assigned, she told Klaus everything. About Morrison and Chen, about Dr. Weber, about the milk and medicine and the hospital where Hope was born, about the colonel who tried to move them too soon and Morrison's transfer to continue helping, about the photograph and the message. Klaus listened in silence, his arm around her shoulders, Hope sleeping peacefully between them. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "I spent a year hating them," he finally said. "The Americans, the British, all of them. Hating them for winning, for defeating us, for everything we lost." He looked down at Hope. "But they saved my daughter. They saved my wife. How do I reconcile that?" "I don't know," Elsa admitted. "I don't know if we're supposed to reconcile it. Maybe we're just supposed to remember it. Remember that even in war, even when everything tells us to hate, some people choose differently. This soldier, Morrison, I owe him everything. We both do, and the only way to repay him is to do what he asked. Raise Hope to be better than we were, to teach her that people matter more than politics." Klaus nodded slowly. "Then that's what we'll do." The years that followed were hard. Germany was divided, the world was changing, and displaced persons like Elsa and Klaus had to fight for every opportunity. But they survived. They found work, eventually secured passage to America through a refugee program, and built a new life in a small town in Pennsylvania. Hope grew up hearing the story of her birth, of the American soldier who brought milk and medicine when everyone expected cruelty. She grew up knowing that her life was a gift, purchased not with violence, but with compassion. And when she was old enough to understand, Elsa gave her the photograph of Morrison and his family. "This man saved your life," she said. "Never forget that enemies can become human to each other. Never forget that kindness is a choice, and it's the most important choice we can make." 30 years later, Hope Morrison Hoffman, she'd taken Morrison's name as her middle name when she became an American citizen, stood in a small town in Ohio, her own children beside her. She'd spent months tracking down James Morrison, the man whose kindness had given her life. The house was modest, well-kept, with a garden in front. An elderly man sat on the porch, his hair white now, his face lined with age. But his eyes were the same, kind, thoughtful, human. "Mr. Morrison?" Hope called out. He looked up, squinting in the sunlight. "Can I help you?" Hope walked closer, her heart pounding. "My name is Hope Hoffman. You knew my mother, Elsa, in 1945, in Austria." Morrison's eyes widened. He stood slowly, leaning on his cane. "Elsa? Little Elsa who was pregnant? You're—" "I'm the baby you saved, the one you brought milk and medicine for." For a moment, Morrison just stared. Then his face crumpled and tears streamed down his weathered cheeks. "You're alive, you're here, I'm here because of you," Hope said, her own voice breaking. "Because you chose to help when you didn't have to. Because you saw my mother as a person, not just an enemy." Morrison reached out with shaking hands, touching Hope's face as if to confirm she was real. "I think about you sometimes, about all of you. I wondered if it made any difference, if any of you survived. We survived, we thrived, and I have children of my own now." Hope gestured to her two teenagers who stood watching with wide eyes. "I've told them your story, about the soldier who proved that humanity is stronger than hatred." Morrison looked at Hope's children, then back at Hope. "I just did what was right, what anyone should have done." "But not everyone did," Hope said gently. "You did, and that made all the difference." They spent the afternoon together, Morrison and the woman whose life he'd saved, sharing stories and memories. He told her about coming home from the war, about the nightmares that haunted him, about how helping those pregnant women had been the one thing he could look back on without regret. Hope told him about growing up in America, about becoming a nurse like Lieutenant Chen, about dedicating her life to helping refugees and displaced persons, carrying forward the kindness that had been shown to her mother. As the sun began to set, Hope prepared to leave, but she had one more thing to give him. She pulled out a letter, written in her mother's handwriting. "Mom died 2 years ago," Hope said softly. "Cancer. But before she passed, she wrote this. She wanted you to have it." Morrison opened the letter with trembling hands. Elsa's words, written in careful English, filled the page. "Dear James, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I needed to write it. You saved my life and my daughter's life, but you did something more important. You saved my faith in humanity. In the darkest moment of history, you showed me that people can choose kindness over cruelty, compassion over hatred. You taught me that our worst moments don't have to define us, that we can always choose to be better." Hope grew up knowing your story. She became a nurse because of you, dedicating her life to helping others the way you helped us. Your kindness didn't just save 2 lives, it rippled forward, touching hundreds more. Thank you, James Morrison. Thank you for seeing us as human. Thank you for bringing milk and medicine when we expected only punishment. Thank you for being the kind of man who makes the world better, even in the smallest ways. You were my enemy, but you became my proof that enemies are just people who haven't yet recognized their shared humanity. With eternal gratitude, Elsa Hoffman. Morrison read the letter twice, tears streaming down his face. When he finally looked up, he could barely speak. "I wish I could have told her. I wish she knew." "She knew," Hope said gently. "She always knew." As Hope drove away with her children, she looked back at the elderly man on the porch, still holding her mother's letter. Her daughter, sitting in the back seat, asked quietly, "Mom, why are you crying?" Hope wiped her eyes and smiled. "Because I just witnessed something beautiful. I saw a man realize that his kindness mattered, that it echoed through decades, that it changed the world in ways he never imagined." "Did it really change the world?" her son asked. "One soldier helping some prisoners?" Hope thought about her mother, about the life they'd built, about her own career helping refugees, about her children who'd grown up knowing that compassion was the highest calling. She thought about all the lives she'd touched, all the people she'd helped, all because one soldier had chosen kindness over hatred. "Yes," she said firmly, "it changed the world. Maybe not the whole world, but our world, and sometimes that's enough." The car drove on through the Ohio countryside, carrying forward the legacy of a moment in 1945, when enemies became human to each other, when milk and medicine became symbols of hope, when one man's choice to help proved that even in the darkest times, light can break through. And somewhere, in the fading light of that spring evening, the echo of that choice continued to ripple forward, touching lives yet to come, proving that kindness is never wasted, that humanity always matters, and that the smallest acts of compassion can change everything.